Welcome to episode number 59 of the On the Blue Line podcast. We call this Monday Morning Roll Call, and I am your host and founder, Wayne Mulder. This week, a new normal. Monday Morning Roll Call starts now.
On my honor, I will never betray my badge, my integrity, my character, or the public trust. I will always have the courage to hold myself and others accountable for their actions. I will always uphold the Constitution, the community, and the agency I serve.
So, welcome to another Monday Morning Roll Call. I just wanted to take a moment and welcome you to this. If this is the first time that you have found this podcast, I just want to tell you that this is just a small excerpt. This is just something that we put out every week to give people something actionable for the week ahead. I throw out an idea, a concept, etc. So if you're looking for a more traditional podcast format, be sure to check out what's called the Interview Room. It's still on the Blue Line podcast, but if you just go down to the ones that say the Interview Room and listen to those, you'll get to hear some of the conversations that I've had with different leaders in not only law enforcement, but also military and other walks of life. So I encourage you to check those out. I hope everyone's having a great week and they're surviving quarantine and wherever this may lead. This week, I want to talk about this phrase, a new normal. And I personally do not like the term, to be honest with you. Usually the ones that are using it in some ways are the same ones that are touting ways of changing the United States, changing America for permanently after this pandemic event. And obviously in that light and in that usage, I don't like it at all. But as I thought about the verbiage, as I thought about the words a new normal, I started thinking a little bit about what this can mean in our personal lives, right? You know, when it's applied to our everyday lives, it's a really good question. In fact, it offers one of self examination. And that's what I wanted to bring to you. You know, I often have to ask myself, am I the same person I was yesterday? Am I the same person I was a week ago? I talk a lot about, if you go back some of the previous episodes, how law enforcement has changed me and how I'm not the same person today as I was when I came into the law enforcement profession. And I think sometimes that you could probably say the same thing, right? If you're sitting in your car right now, whatever you're doing, maybe you're on the job, maybe you're at home, if you take a minute and you look back, you're probably thinking, I'm not either. And what I hope is that you're not the same person because of improvement, because of things that you've done that have changed who you are and what you want to be and what you want to accomplish, right? So that's what I wanted to discuss. In recent weeks, I've spoken about this idea, of coming out of the pandemic a different person, coming out of the pandemic improving. And every once in a while, when you put that out there, you'll get a little bit of pushback and you'll get those that are saying, well, you don't need to, this doesn't need to be all about physical exercise, or this doesn't need to all be about some big life-changing moment. You're going to go into this pandemic and then come out the other side completely changed, enlightened. I guess the new term would be woke. I don't know. Whatever that is, some people are saying, well, you don't need to come into this and then come out the other end with that big of a change. And I would agree with that. In fact, I would argue that it shouldn't be one big change that this 4 to 6 week period prompted, but rather that we should be in a state of continuous improvement. That would be my argument. So I would, in part, agree with those that would say that. I think that sometimes we get complacent, right? And that's what this is all about. When we talk with trainees, when we have new ones join either in the academy setting or when they come out to the road, a conversation we often have is complacency can kill. And what we mean by that is in law enforcement, over time, it's those hours of boredom with moments of terrifying excitement. And what happens so often is those hours of boredom just go on and on and on and on. And you kind of get used to things not going bad. You've sat down in how many restaurants by now? Well, pre the pandemic. You sat down in how many restaurants by now? And nothing happened. And thank God that you sat down in the restaurant and nothing happened. But the longer that goes on, the more complacent you become, the less head on a swivel, so to speak, that you have, the less keeping an eye on what people do. You see it even with officer safety when someone responds to a house. The guys that used to be, bladed stance, paying a lot of attention to what the other person's hands were doing. Are their hands in their pocket? Wait, can I see what they're doing? That skill set starts to disappear over time, and complacency can lead to death eventually in this industry, because when something goes bad, they're not ready. So that idea of what can kill in this line of work and in other lines of work, it also can kill in our personal lives, right? When we become complacent, it kills achieving what we were put on this planet to accomplish. It can kill our relationships. It can kill our relationships with our spouse, with our children, and other important relationships in our lives. It can kill our earning potential because we get an increased stress, or we don't want to do what it is that we were put on this planet to do. And because of that, complacency keeps us from moving to the next level, moving to what our calling actually is. Complacency is and can be a formidable enemy. Now, what I found interesting, and I do this all the time, and it probably drives some of you crazy, but I love to look at definitions, because I think that when we use words in the English language, if we don't look at what the intended use of it is and start there, we often miss something, right? So the definition of complacency, or to be complacent, is uncritical satisfaction with oneself or one's achievements. And I found that interesting, right? Because I think that there's an argument here that what we need to be doing in most cases is being willing to critically evaluate ourselves. It's a sign of maturity when you can question yourself, when you can question your actions, your motives, identify areas where improvement is needed, and then tackle those areas. Again, this isn't about some going out to some mountaintop experience and having this momentary change where you come down and you're enlightened now. You're not the same person anymore. That may happen. That's a great thing if it happens for you. If that is how your life changes, amen. That's awesome. But that's not how it happens for most people. What happens is it's slow, consistent steps over a period of time. It's identifying areas where I need to improve today, tomorrow, the next day, and I take those little steps each and every day. When I was looking up this idea of fighting off complacency, I wanted to look in general terms. So I started looking at some websites that actually talk about complacency in the workplace. And they were sites that were talking specifically about safety, where someone may get injured in the workplace, and things that you can do to avoid complacency from like an OSHA type perspective, right? And I will put these links in there. But what I thought as I was looking at their 4-step plan, or their 4 ideas on how to avoid complacency so you don't get injured in a workplace, say maybe falling off a ladder at a paint company or whatever the case may be, that when taken broadly, their 4 ideas could be applied to our personal lives. And they're a great place to start. So I'm going to first give you what they said, and then I'm going to give you how we can apply it. So first of all, they said have a company mission statement. So in other words, they're telling their employees, or they're telling those companies that are part of their network, that if you want to avoid a workplace accident, if you want to avoid complacency, you have to have a mission statement. And the reasoning there, the thinking is that if people know what the mission is and what you're trying to accomplish, they are less likely to just be going through frivolous tasks, to just be doing things that are not on par or not going to get them where they're trying to go. So then my question to you is, what is my personal mission statement? And I've spoken about this before, but when we think of it in this idea of complacency, one way to avoid complacency in our personal lives, to avoid that uncritical analysis of what we're trying to do, is to have a personal mission statement. What is it that you are trying to accomplish in life? What is your why? What is it? Think about it. In fact, if you haven't done that yet, because we've talked about it in several other podcasts, maybe pause this podcast. Maybe go ahead and stop it and then come back to it. But stop right there and work on your personal mission statement. This doesn't have to be paragraphs and paragraphs of an idea. It doesn't have to be a life-changing idea, even though it will be over time. But it doesn't have to be life-changing in that moment. But think of what is your personal mission statement. My mission on this planet is I want to be the best husband that I can be, the best wife that I can be. I want to be the best father that I can be. I want to continuously learn. I want to make a difference in as many lives as I can in my time on this earth. And then define that even greater. Dig in, and then dig in a little deeper, and then dig in a little deeper until it becomes very clear. Know what guides you. Know what keeps you going. In the same way that they avoid complacency with a mission statement in a company, we can avoid complacency when we know what our personal mission is. The second one that they said was create an accountability system. So there, the idea is that in the business environment that you're going to have someone keeping an eye out and saying, "Hey, that's not a safe act. Hey, that's going to lead you where you don't want to go. Hey, that may have you fall off the ladder and injure yourself. You do not want to do that." In our personal lives, having a community in our life is what helps us reach the next level and keeps us from doing actions, doing things that could harm us, that could lead to complacency, that could keep us stuck in a rut for years and years and years. You need to have those brothers, you need to have those sisters, the camaraderie, the people that come up next to you. We have that a little bit in law enforcement within an agency, within a squad, within a platoon. And as a leader, I think that's one of the fundamental jobs that you have is to make that a positive environment where you're drawing the people up into that group and that group has a mission and that within that mission, each of them are working together and it creates kind of an accountability group of sorts. It keeps you together so that you can move forward. It's that whole iron sharpening iron concept. That's the whole idea of what is now our closed Facebook group. And I'll be honest with you, it's not what it's supposed to be, but it's becoming it. And it's going to be a slow process. And part of that is getting more and more people into the group. And then the second part of it is some spinoffs that we're doing that are going to be specifically only for law enforcement officers. Because the idea is to have a community, someplace you can plug in. So if you don't have that already, I suggest after this or right now, go to Facebook, go to groups, and go to OnTheBlueLine Guild, Guild, Guild. And the big question I always get is, what in the world is a guild? Well, a guild is exactly what we're talking about here. A guild is a group that's working towards a common goal. Normally, it's in some sort of construction or some sort of environment where you're working towards bettering yourself and whatever that is. Well, that's the whole idea. So either this group or another group or just a group of people in your own life that you have that can serve, I don't like the term accountability partner, but that can create a brotherhood or a sisterhood that helps you get to the next level. So then the third thing that they suggested is practice stop work authority or an SWA. So again, geared towards the business world. But I would say when we apply this to our lives, give yourself permission to adjust fire. In other words, sometimes complacency comes from the feeling that we're pounding our head against the wall and we're trying to do something. And really what we need is permission to ourselves to stop and to adjust fire. Just because you have this mission statement and this is your plan doesn't mean there aren't going to be moments where you need to change. It doesn't mean there isn't going to be someone that comes alongside and says, "Hey, Wayne, I think that you need to do it this way," or "I think you need to consider that." And then it needs to be considered. But oftentimes, what I find, the person who doesn't give us permission to change or to adjust fire when it's not working is ourselves. So we have to give ourselves that permission. We have to say, you know what? I'm willing to change. I am willing to look at this. And if it's not going the way it's supposed to, then I'm willing to look at it from a different direction. Because at the end of the day, I want to make a difference in as many lives as I can in the amount of time that I have on this earth. And if that's my goal, then I have to be willing to change and to adjust as I grow, as I develop, as I become better. And that's another way that we can help avoid complacency. The final one that they suggested was follow up with Toolbox Talks. So, in other words, kind of like the proverbial water cooler, have meetings with your people that you work with at the toolbox to talk about safety, to talk about little informal trainings. Well, when applied to our life, train regularly on the skill set you need for the next level. Training doesn't always have to be formal. That's the idea that they're trying to say to the workplace environment. And the same truth is there for us in our personal lives. It doesn't have to be formal. In fact, some of the greatest skills that I have learned and that I've been able to develop in myself have all come from informal training, from this kind of thing, from just putting myself out there and trying to work on it and saying, okay, what can I do to get to the next level? So I encourage you to, and this is kind of going back to that brotherhood idea, correct? If you're around people that are sages, if you're around people that have experience and have developed themselves, gotten to the next level that you want to get to, surround yourself with those people. Then follow suit. Sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you just have to put yourself in the right environment. And then that will allow you to learn, to develop, to these informal trainings, these skill sets from being in a community. It all goes hand in hand. And then finally, tomorrow is a new day. And this one I added because I think the other thing that happens, and I know I do this to myself all the time, and if I do it, there's a good possibility, whoever's listening to this right now, if you're in your car, wherever you are, that you do it. And that is, you put so much pressure on yourself, so much stress that I've got to reach this level, I've got to do this, or I've got to do that. And it almost puts you into a tailspin. And we have to be willing to give ourselves permission to stop and then start again tomorrow. Sometimes the worst thing we do when it comes to complacency is the amount of pressure we put on ourselves that keeps us from getting to where we're trying to get to. So tomorrow is a new day. And so often we create this cycle where we bear down on ourselves and we feel like we're failing. So we end up getting into the self-fulfilling cycle of we just keep failing. Sometimes we need to give ourselves permission. We stop and we can start again in the morning with a new outlook and a new way of going about whatever it may be. So complacency can kill. We should be in a continuous state of finding the new normal in our lives, and then that normal should be there. And for a while, we've got to be able to critically evaluate where we are and where we're going and continue to improve. Now, a word of caution. This is not a plea for a frenzied, no relaxation approach to life. In fact, that will have the opposite effect. And it's going to lead you further into stagnation and complacency. We were not created to run ourselves ragged, to not take time to breathe, and to just be quiet, as we've discussed before. So what I'm advocating is a willingness to critically evaluate ourselves, a willingness to know where we are and where we're going, and then a need to pause and to relax, and when necessary, start again tomorrow. You know, as we wait for life to get back for normal, and I hope for you and me that we have found a new normal for our approach to life as we continue to strive to be the men and women that we are called to be. Brothers and sisters, stay safe out there. That does it for this week's Monday Morning Roll Call. I'll hope to see you next week at Roll Call, and in the meantime, I'll see you on the Blue Line. Hey everyone, Wayne Mulder here, and just real quick, I want you to do two things for me right now. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, but if you haven't done this before, if you would do two things for me, whatever medium that you are listening to this podcast on, would you do me a favor and roll to the bottom of it? There should be a way to leave a rating and a review, and if you would do that for this podcast, you have no idea how helpful and beneficial that would be to keep this message getting out to the people that need it. And secondly, all of the Monday Morning Roll Calls are also available on YouTube as a video format now. So if you would, go to the On the Blue Line YouTube channel, and on there, if you would just click subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it, and then you'll be notified when more of those episodes come out on a weekly basis. Other than that, for news and any information on what is going on and what we're doing going forward, I encourage you to go to OnTheBlueLine.com, OnTheBlueLine.com. Thank you.